I'm Sarah Jacobs of Jacobs Burger, and I am here today welcoming Nikki Bruno of the Epic Comeback. Nikki, hey, how are you?
Hey, what's going on, Miss Sarah? I'm so happy to be here.
I am very appreciative of you being here, and I'm really jazzed about what we're talking about today because I know that it's a personal passion project for you. I've had an opportunity to talk with you about it a lot, and I know that you are super excited about sharing it with anybody and everybody that you come in contact with. And I'm really glad to be able to introduce it to our viewers and our followers, and all of my friends and colleagues. So let's talk a little bit about your business, the Epic Comeback. Tell me, we tweaked it all out with if you've been through loss or divorce or illness or trauma, you're the one to talk to about how to come back from that. So tell me a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, I am the one to talk to. I am the Epic Comeback expert. I feel like I have a PhD in Epic Comeback studies because I have been geeking out for years now on what it means to stage a comeback from a life-shattering experience. What human qualities does it take? What is the pathway? What do you need to do? And I have been studying hundreds of individuals, corporations who have come through comebacks and have come through trauma and built something in their lives, in their organizations that's better than what they had before they went through the trauma, partly because they went through it. And so I own a coaching practice and a podcast called The Epic Comeback, and I help people to rebuild their lives in an epic way in the wake of divorce, illness, loss, any kind of life-shattering experience that you could describe. It really applies to any kind of a comeback. And I do have some specialties, but yeah, that's what I do. And I pinch myself every day that I get to do this work.
I want to do a little bit of a deep dive into the whole comeback and what means epic and all of that. But let's back up for a little bit because you said that you own a coaching business. And I feel that it's important to take a couple of minutes and talk about what coaching is, why coaching, and what the difference between coaching and therapy is. So can you shed some light on that for me?
I'd love to. So the simplest way to describe what a coach does, a professional coach, whether they're a life coach, an executive coach, a relationship coach, there are so many different niches that you can fill as a coach. But generally speaking, what we do is we help people transform. We catalyze a person's movement from point A to point B. Coaches are all about helping people take action to go from where they are now to where they are dying to get in the future. So it's about taking apart, okay, where am I right now? What does right now look like? And being really honest about that. And where do I want to be in my life, in my business, in my relationship? And what does that look like? And creating a beautiful, compelling, specific vision around that point B. Where do you want to be? Where are you? Where is your gut telling you that you need to go? And then creating a plan to get there, and then implementing that plan. And of course, along the way, when we implement a plan in life, stuff happens, right? We face obstacles. So we face external obstacles like a pandemic that are completely out of our control. And we
also power outage when you're scheduled to do a live interview on Facebook. Either way.
Like last week, we were supposed to do this, and some hurricane decided to come by. Totally. So external obstacles as well as internal obstacles. And the biggest internal obstacle always, is fear. That's the biggest internal obstacle. But there are also limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves and about the world. There are also misinterpretations or different types of interpretations that lead us astray. Gremlins that we have, voices inside of us that tell us that we're not good enough or smart enough or tall enough or thin enough or what have you. So that's what coaching is. And so I am a poster gal for both therapy and coaching. I believe that if you work with both a therapist and a coach, which I do, you are freaking unstoppable. And therapy really, and again, this is a generalization, but therapy is more about emotion and coaching is more about action. So you're working with your therapist on regulating your emotions, understanding yourself, understanding your identity and who you are and where you came from. There's a lot of origin work in therapy. There's a lot of, let's talk about your family. Let's talk about some patterns that you have of behavior and thought right now, and kind of try to figure out where they came from. Coaches are much more about the future, which isn't to say you would never talk about the past with your coach, but what you're doing with your coach is you're talking about, okay, here's a place I want to get to. Here are some things that are getting in my way. Here's how I'm going to kick some booty and reach those goals. So that's kind of the distinction. And the other thing is that coaches, unless they're also licensed mental health professionals, coaches are not about necessarily qualified to help you heal your trauma, and certainly to treat a mental health condition or disorder, such as depression, such as helping you sort of heal your trauma. So I work with people who come through, who are going through and have come out of trauma, but my explicit role is not to help you heal. My role is to help you take stock of what you're going through. Doesn't so much matter why. What matters is, what are you going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? And where do you want to move in your life? And let's start taking action. And coaches, the last thing I'll say is that coaches have an accountability function that therapists don't usually take on. It's not, your therapist isn't going to say, drop and give me 20, or your therapist isn't going to say, like, how did your homework go? How did your assignment go?
Depends on your therapist.
It depends on your therapist. And like I said, these are generalizations, but your coach agrees with you on a mechanism for accountability to remind you, hey, these are the goals that you have committed to. And let's talk about how your actions and decisions are reflecting those goals. So a lot of people think about coaching, especially life coaching, as something that's kind of superficial or fluffy. It's not superficial and fluffy. Not if you're working with an excellent coach who knows what she or he is doing. It's not fluffy. It is actually a financial investment in yourself. And I've seen this happen with my clients and other, I have a lot of colleagues who are coaches. The kinds of outcomes that people have when working with coaches are astounding and cataclysmically amazing. When you are achieving a kind of mindset and confidence and direction and mojo with a coach who's your champion, you're on fire. You advocate for yourself. You get that $30,000, $50,000 raise. All of a sudden you're making $1.5 million deals when before you were making $500,000 deals. So I've had multiple clients who within 6 to 8 weeks of working with me have made back the money that they invested in me, plus another 2 to 3 times.
So one of the things that you said really intrigued me. You were talking about the fact that you are working with people that have been through trauma, life shattering, I believe was the word that you used. And you also were talking about, kind of mobilizing people and helping them move from where they are now and where they really, I think you said, dying to be. And what struck me is, especially being a divorce lawyer and having clients who are kind of sometimes they're super happy about it, but sometimes they're, in this life shattering phase. A lot of the feedback that I get in this time, and even post this time is, I don't have any clue where I want to be. Like, I'm still trying to look around and figure out how the hell I got to this place. And I don't know what I want to do in 6 days, 6 months, 6 years. So one of your specialties, I believe, in this Epic Comeback program is working specifically with divorced individuals or people who are finishing their divorce process. Tell me how those gel. Like, how does that work together?
Yeah, I kind of have 2 things to say about that. Well, I'll only say 2 of the many things I could say. One of them is, it's not always the right time to be working with a coach. That's the first thing I'm going to say. I went through a 3-year-long high conflict divorce. And when I was going through the worst of the hell of that time, I was not in a place to be working with a life coach. I was working with my therapist, and when my kids weren't with me, a lot of that time I was on the ground. I was definitely suffering. And so I was not in a place where I really could spend much time on taking action or on developing a plan or developing a vision. It takes some work. It really takes a brain in a place that can envision the future. Okay, so that's the first thing that I would say is my clients need to start working with me when they're ready. So they're starting to feel their sea legs again. They're starting to feel some of that kind of mojo come back if they have been flat on the ground and potentially depressed or really, really suffering. And that's a time to be working with a therapist. So that's the first thing I'll say. The second thing that I'll say is I do have, I'm thinking of one client in particular right now she's the beginning of the divorce process, but she is ready to create a vision. She is ready to be taking action and moving forward at the same time that she's going through a lot of grief and going through pain, and yet she's ready. And
she's got the fire in the belly.
She's got fire in the belly. And the other thing that can happen in a marriage, and I know you know this, Sarah, with your clients, is that sometimes the mourning and the grief that need to happen to mourn the loss of a marriage, of a partnership, and even the loss of time with your children and all the other losses, some of that mourning, and this was true of me, happened while I was still married. And happened while I was kind of discovering, I was mourning it while I was crying myself to sleep for, regularly for the last couple of years of my marriage. So it really just depends on where people are in their emotional process, and where, it also depends on, okay, well, were you the person who filed for divorce? Was this something that you wanted? Did you initiate it, or did your spouse initiate it? So it just kind of depends. But one thing that I find is, when I'm working with folks who are kind of more toward the beginning of divorce and they're more raw, I would say, our sessions are somewhat different. And we don't necessarily create a very fully fleshed out vision right from the beginning, as an epic vision of the future right from the beginning, but we might choose maybe one thing. Like when I was going through my divorce, I had this type of art that I wanted to hang from my kitchen window. That was all I had. I wasn't working with a coach at this time, but I instinctively knew that I had to have something. I had to have some future vision that would help me get through. And it was like in my new home with my children, that I would be the head of my household, and I would be able to just create a space for my children and me. And I would just think about that piece of art that I was going to hang in the kitchen. So a vision, again, it doesn't have to be fully fleshed out. You don't have to know everything about it. And your coach is there. I'm there to help hold your hand and, and gently, somewhat gently guide you.
I don't believe that of you for one second, Nikki, gently. But
well, I can totally be gentle. I promise.
But honest.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've said to you in the past, and I feel our listeners and our viewers need to know, is here we are, and you've labeled this program the Epic Comeback. And I said to you in a personal moment, it feels very intimidating. Like, I don't know if I can be epic. I don't know if I can come back. And I obviously wasn't talking to you from a personal life-shattering position. I was, talking about the programming and concepts, and said, how do clients feel about that kind of pressure? And, you had a very wise response, and I think it's worth sharing with everybody else. What does that mean? Epic and comeback.
The epic comeback is absolutely open to interpretation. That's what I love about it. My definition of an epic comeback is going to be different from your definition of one, is going to be different from anyone else's definition of an epic comeback. And it's true, to some people, the concept of an epic comeback can be intimidating. It can feel like pressure. That's not true of everyone. There are people who hear about my program, especially people who have been through absolute and total and utter hell, and especially people who've been through a high conflict divorce, where you've got an adversary. You're already in, whether you're happy about this or not, you're in a type of battle, and the stakes are really, really high. And so when you're in an epic low, when you've had something really hellish happen to you, let's say you've been indicted for a crime that you didn't commit, your comeback has to be epic, because your version of hell has been epic, has been extreme, right? So my brand tends to attract people who've been through something pretty hardcore. That said, the way that I personally define an epic comeback, because I went through my own, this company that I have created and this brand that I've created absolutely comes out of my personal experience and my own epic comeback. And for me, an epic comeback, it's not about publishing a bestseller necessarily. I'll say for me, it's not about winning a Nobel Prize. It's not about starting a multi-million-dollar business. It's not about something external so much as it is about something internal. And to me, the epic comeback means freedom. It also means that you're coming back to yourself, because when I was going through the hell and trauma of a high conflict divorce, I lost touch with myself. I almost lost me, my sacred relationship with myself. I was having problems with my self-esteem. I didn't trust myself and my ability to make decisions. And I'm like, which is just it's actually kind of ridiculous. Like, objectively speaking, I'm a very intelligent person. I have 2 Ivy League degrees, and here I am, like, I don't trust myself to make decisions. That was terrible. And so for me, an epic comeback was it was about coming back to and within myself. It was about getting my mojo back after losing it and smiling and feeling joy again. And it was also about freedom. It was about, I'm going to build a new life for myself and my children, where I'm calling the shots and where I'm free to build the life that I want.
So I'm hearing, and tell me if I'm correct, that the epic comeback is if Joe comes to you and wants an epic comeback, his epic comeback might be at this level. And if Sally comes to you and wants an epic comeback, she might be on this trajectory. And, if Paul comes and he wants to be here, he might be going a little bit like this, but you're meeting these people where they are. Epic is what epic means to each and every individual, and coming back to yourself for each of these people is how they define authenticity, how they define, feeling like they're back in their skin and they're, like we said, their fire is in the belly and they're in their mojo. Is that fair?
Correct. On all counts. Counselor.
A+ for me, because we all know that I like to get my A++ on the homework. I get the star. Happy day. And I think, we've talked about that one of the ways that you elicit this, that you meet people, that you get that fire in the belly, is by, really working on what you call their superpowers. And once again, I had that whole well, that seems a little foofy and I'm not sure. Tell me about this superpower thing. Like, do I have to wear a cape? Like, what's the plan here? And once again, you had a very wise comeback and you explained to me exactly what that means. So share with everybody, what is a superpower in this program?
The way that I define a superpower is that a superpower, and by the way, everyone has them. Every single human has superpowers. What it is a quality or an activity, something that comes extraordinarily naturally to you, such that you sometimes don't even realize what your superpower is because you think everyone is like that. So there are 2 criteria. You're naturally incredible at it. And then the second criterion is that it brings you joy. So for me, if one of my clients is incredibly technically amazing at playing the violin, but it doesn't bring her joy, then according to my definition, it's not a superpower, because I would not encourage someone to engage in an activity or to sort of use one of their powers if it's not something that brings them joy. Because I have a very, very strengths and superpowers based philosophy as a coach and as a person. I believe in my core that we serve the universe best. We serve ourselves, others, our organizations, our children, our communities, and the world best when we are in our zone of genius, when we are exercising our superpowers. And it all comes back to joy. And so what I'm saying, to me, that's the barometer right there, is joy. If a client is coming to me and saying, I'm not feeling the joy, I'm not feeling the mojo, I'm saying, okay, all right, would you kind of want to feel more joy every day? And probably if you're going to kind of feel more joy every day, then you have to engage in things that bring you joy. So
it's simple, but somewhat elusive, I think, especially in this upside down that we're all living in.
Yes. But I need to know. I need to know right away. When I work with someone, I need to know right away. I've created an assessment and it's called the Superpower Finding Assessment. It's not like the MBTI. It's not like DISC. It's not a long, it's a qualitative conversation where I'm asking really open-ended, really powerful questions about what brings you joy and about, about where that zone of genius is. And my superpower, my greatest superpower, is that I quickly and intuitively see and sense and can divine other people's superpowers. So that's where my work as a coach begins, is I want to know what makes you outrageously, amazingly awesome. And even if you don't think you are, my belief is that you are. I need to know what makes you a rock star, and then we work from there.
That is, and I can personally say that the superpower assessment is unsettling sometimes, but like crazy amazing on the back end and sort of blows your mind. So if I'm someone who's toying with this idea that like, here I've been with this earth-shattering loss and I don't even know how to find the light. I don't know how to crawl forward, but something in me is saying, this way, like claw this way. What is the one piece of advice that you can give to that person to like help motivate them to the next step? I know, loaded question. I'm sorry, I threw you a curveball.
I love this question, and I've answered it in a number of different ways. The really most honest answer is the step that you can take, the first step that you can take is to take the time and the reflection to tell the absolute truth of where you are and who you are to yourself first. And eventually the idea is to tell the absolute total truth to the people in your life who love you unconditionally and are the most important people in your life. And to get a little more concrete with it, because someone just telling you like, oh, the first step to an epic comeback is to tell the truth. Like that's, it's kind of general. Like, what does that look like? And what I do with myself and what I do with my clients is to suggest go to a place where you have no distractions, where you can get really quiet and just be quiet for a minute and breathe for a minute. It doesn't have to be any kind of formal meditation or anything like that, but just get quiet and ask yourself, what is a truth that I need to hear right now? What do I need to know right now? What is something that's very true that I need to hear right now? And you're not asking your brain. You're asking your heart. You're asking your intuition, your gut, and you're also asking the universe. You're asking, in a way, it's kind of a petition, or a prayer. And I know not everyone prays, and that's totally cool. But it's a question that you're putting out there. Like, I'd like to know the answer to this. And for me, it always works. It doesn't necessarily work in the moment. It could be I wake up in the middle of the night and there's my truth, like just what do I need to hear right now? And that is the first step to an epic comeback. If you were to do that for, let's just say, even 30 days, if you were to try that every day for 30 days, you would know the truth of where you are and where you want to be. And you would start taking action just kind of naturally and magically. You would start taking action toward that reflects that truth. And some truths are, and this is why it can feel intimidating and can be hard work, and is something that I would say, don't necessarily try this at home. If you're in a place where you're feeling really emotional, like, hire a coach, work with your therapist, work with, like sit down and maybe hold hands with somebody that you really, really trust. But when you know the truth of where you are and where you want to be, like I said, you start manifesting who you are and where you want to be. And that realization or that truth that you hear might be, I hate my job. I'm miserable in my marriage. My relationship with my daughter is suffering. I mean, some really tough stuff could come up, But what I encourage people to do is don't just tell the negative truths. Don't just tell the painful truths. Open yourself up to the truths about who you are and where you are that are positive. Look what I did and achieved today. Look at what's happening in my life. Look what I'm grateful for. Look at these incredible children that I have. Look at this amazing job that I'm so fortunate to have. Like, be honest about the good as well as the bad and the ugly.
I think that is great advice. And I know that, when you're brutally honest, sometimes you can mobilize. And I think that that's what clients are looking for, is to take that action, to move from one step to another. And I know that once they're in the program, you have, good fire to keep under their tush, to keep them mobilized and keep them moving, and keep them accountable to their goals. And I think that first step is so critical. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. I also appreciate you being here today. I appreciate you rescheduling after we called our audible, because we think external forces couldn't control either. And I look forward to seeing all the different epic comebacks that you're working on right now and the product of your hard work.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And might I say, you are my favorite family law attorney ever, with the tied with my own.
So A+++, I get again 2 A++ in one session. I feel super excited. Thanks, Nikki, so much. I really appreciate you being here today.
My pleasure.